Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. It is December! I know it feels like I haven't actually been gone because I've been posting videos, but those were scheduled pretty far out. So I've actually been on a cruise this past weekend, which was so exciting. So this is going to be my first video I'm actually filming in December, which is so exciting. I'm so excited. So when I think of December, I think about looking back on my reading year. It is a time to reflect on what I've gotten through, what I haven't gotten to, which was a lot, and what I liked, what I didn't like, surprises, and what's going on in general. So that's kind of what these next two videos are about. This is going to be a two-part video, basically. The first one is going to be books I should have loved but I did not, which is always really sad, and there's always way more of these for some reason than the other one. And then there are books that I loved but shouldn't have. There's always less of those because I tend to stay in my comfort zone. Therefore, if I don't like a book, it tends to be something from my comfort zone, and it's like, that's really weird. And when I love a book, it's normally in my comfort zone. So I'm like, yeah, that's pretty on par. So there are definitely like way more in this video than the other one. So we're just going to get to it. We're going to get to it and we're going to start popping them up here. And I'm very briefly going to go over them because I don't want these videos to be very long. So first up, and the first book that I actually read in 2022 is No Beauties or Monsters. Also, if I'm looking down my handy dandy lists right here. So No Beauties or Monsters. This one was a doozy. I actually had this listed as one of my most anticipated books of 2022, and it's the first book that I read, so I was like, it's going to be good. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be great. And the cover is beautiful. It is so beautiful. So this book is supposed to be about a girl who moves back to the desert with her mother. Her father has already passed away, but she's moving back because her grandfather has passed away and they need to kind of look at his property. And she finds out that one of her friends from her past has disappeared. And this is a disappearance in a long line of disappearance in this very strange town. And you kind of get a little bit of a sci-fi vibe, but mostly from the dust jacket, you get the idea that this is a murder mystery because there seems to be a serial killer running around town and she has to figure out who the serial killer is. She needs to find her friend who she hopes isn't going to be one of the victims of the serial killer. And then there's something weird going on in her grandfather's cabin that may point to him being involved in some of this stuff. And while that's all going on, there are strange wild beasts that keep showing up, and there's a bunch of sightings. So to me, this reads definitely like a, not true crime, but crime, mystery, young adult, maybe a little bit of sci-fi, but mostly we're following the serial killer thing. Yeah, no, we definitely did not. Probably gonna be talking about this one a little more because it is the first book and one of my most anticipated. It was just really weird. It was so weird, and it was definitely more heavy sci-fi than thriller, young adult mystery, etc. It was definitely very heavy sci-fi. And sci-fi is not a genre I normally like, so I feel like I was kind of misled into reading this book, which is really unfortunate. But it still had a lot of potential. I just didn't enjoy how boring it got at some points, how almost nothing was happening. The serial killer thing was just like not important whatsoever in this book. And it was just overall a very disappointing book. So I think I give it like a 2. It was not it for me. Next up on this list is The Maid. This seems like it would be right up my alley. It is following a maid and there's some mysterious crime things going on in the hotel that she works in, and she kind of accidentally gets embroiled in this mystery. I give this a 1. I really hated this book. I don't like when books use mentally challenged as a plot device. I don't understand how so many people like this because it felt kind of just insulting because the main character definitely has people anxiety, some form of Asperger's or something like that. So she doesn't understand everything that's going on. So like people are taking advantage of her. She doesn't realize it. She thinks they're just being nice. She doesn't understand social cues, and because of her, she like lives alone now. So she doesn't understand certain things. So it is horribly uncomfortable to watch because it's not a good plot device. I don't understand why people enjoyed that so much because it was just people taking advantage of someone who isn't 100% there. And it makes me so mad because my sister-in-law is actually mentally handicapped, and it's the same thing. You can tell her something and she'll just believe you or do what you say, and it's not a cute plot device that you should be using. It's not okay. I don't like it. It happens in real life. It should not be used in this type of situation. And I don't like how they played it off at the end either. There's like a thing at the end that happens that it's like plot twist, and it's just, no, this was kind of an insulting book. I know a lot of people liked it, but I told my husband about it and he took major offense to it. He really hates anything that uses mentally handicapped people as some sort of plot device, because it shouldn't be. It's not okay. And I don't feel like it was good representation. I wish there was more representation in the book. Like, I feel like it would have been better if the main character, they could be the same person, but they have someone with them guiding them or helping them, instead of just kind of her going on her own. Like, she has like people who are trying to help her, but it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. I do wish there was more representation of this group of people in books. I feel like they're not included in books enough. So that needs to be done, just not in this kind of setting. The next book that I really did not enjoy and was a huge surprise to me was The Appeal. I should have loved this book so much. I should have loved this book so much because it's mixed media. I love mixed media. So there's like emails and transcripts and all sorts of stuff telling the story, but it was so horribly boring. I could not even tell you what the plot was about. I could not tell you. And I read it pretty early in the year, so I could not tell you what the plot was about currently. But it was just so boring. It wasn't entertaining, and this is the first time mixed media really hasn't worked for me, which is really sad. Actually, there was one later on this list that also falls into the same issue, but we'll get to it. Next one that I should have loved was Anatomy: A Love Story. I did give this, I think, like a 2.5, and I'm holding on to the book unlike the rest of them on this list because I think it could get better with the second book. I mostly hated this because of the ending, but this is kind of like a Frankenstein, Jack the Ripper. It's that era of things, and it's a woman who wants to be a surgeon, but she's a woman, so it's not exactly looked nicely upon. So I like the setting. I love the idea of it. It just wasn't executed very well. The end of the book just wasn't very good, and that's pretty much where most of my dislike comes from it. But there is supposed to be a second book, so I'm going to read that, and it may change my opinion on this. But currently, as we stand at the end of 2022, this is a book I absolutely should have loved. This is my favorite, one of my favorite time periods for stories, and I really didn't like it. Another one that I absolutely should have loved was Book of Cold Cases. Yikes! Yikes, I hated that book. I should love everything Simone St. James writes. I have loved everything that Simone St. James has written, and this one was just so not it for me. And I think I do a whole review of this, or it's in something. I think I talk about it, but the book should have either leaned more thriller or more horror supernatural, because the thriller parts were so underdeveloped. They were not good. The mystery and the thriller was so underdeveloped. It was so disappointing. The horror aspects in the house was so good and legitimately creepy. This should have just full went into horror with a small mystery in the background. But otherwise, it's just this woman who is interviewing this other woman who supposedly got away with murder. And I should have loved it. A podcaster, a blogger, interviewing old famous woman who possibly murdered a bunch of people, and there's some ghosty things going on. I should have loved it, and I was so bored, and I didn't understand the ending really. It was very odd, convoluted ending, and I really did not like that one. The next one on this list is one that I really never wanted to talk about again, but it's The Princess Trap by Talia Hibbert. 0 out of 5. This was one of the worst books I've ever read, which is saying something. It is really saying something. I hated it so much, and I don't know if it was just because it was nothing like what I was expecting. I read the Chloe Brown series first, and I loved them. I loved Chloe Brown. I wasn't a big fan of the Dani Brown book, but I loved Eve Brown. I loved Chloe Brown and Eve Brown. Those two books. I still love Dani Brown, just not her book necessarily. And that book is actually what The Princess Trap felt like, but even more underdeveloped. So like, take Dani Brown's character and the guy that Dani Brown is with, put them in The Princess Trap. It's like she recycled those two characters and brought them to Dani Brown. And it was just so underdeveloped. I felt like it wasn't thought clearly enough. It was just smut galore, which most of her books are, but this was even worse. This was even more like obscene. And the problem is, I was okay with it in the Chloe Brown series. If you don't know, I'm not like a big smut reader. I was okay with it in the Chloe Brown series because there was so much chemistry between all the characters. I felt no chemistry between these characters, so I was just not a fan. I was not a fan, and it should have been one that I loved, because I loved Holly Hibbert's books, and I like the idea of a prince meeting or just a regular woman, smart woman, and he's just taken with her. I love that idea, but it wasn't executed well. Did not like it. Hard pass for me. The next book was probably one of my biggest disappointments, and also because I had to get rid of the book. The book is one of the most beautiful books that I own, in my opinion. Well, just cover-wise. Like, I have categories for beautiful books, like special editions are kind of over here because they have all these special things to them, and then there's just regular books that have beautiful covers. This is just a regular book with a beautiful cover, and it is the Cartographers. Yikes! I have a whole review on it. It's actually one of my first big videos on Big for Me, which is like 600, I don't know what it is at anymore. That was at something. It reached 600 at some point. I don't know if it's gotten more. But for me, it was a big deal that it released, and it was like a scathing review of the book, which I was like, oh god. Of course, the thing where I'm super negative, that's what's doing well on my channel. Figures. But the Cartographers should have been the coolest book on the planet. It was National Treasure, which I love. I love National Treasure, and like Indiana Jones mystery things going on. I kind of look like that guy who's like aliens. That's how I feel. But yeah, should have been the coolest book. 90% of the book didn't make, as I will say a saying from my husband, a lick of sense. And it was so boring and weird. And I should have DNF'd it like 3 times. But I honestly got to a point where I was like, where is this going? Like, where is the author going with this? And I finished it, and I could not have guessed where the author was going with this in a million years, because it made no sense. The characters made no sense. Their motivations for things didn't make any sense. Their decisions in life didn't make any sense. And I just baffled. This book baffles me. So I had a whole review about that where I go into a rant kind of like this, and it's too much. It's too much. I hated that. I should have loved it because it should have been National Treasure mystery stuff going on, and it was terrible. It was so bad. Next one that I did not like was a huge surprise, Portrait of a Scotsman. The first 2 books were 5 stars. I absolutely adored them. And then this book came, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And I read it, and I was like, this is awful. This is awful. I didn't like either of the main characters, which is super weird. Normally I love her main characters. Hated both main characters, which is weird because I liked them, or I liked the woman from the previous books, because like how all romance authors do pretty much now, if they want to continue a series, is they in like the first and second book, they introduce the characters for the next book. So we're following like a group of women who are friends, and so I loved all of them. But this one was just like, what did you do to her character? Her character is awful. Her motivations are awful. Her decisions are awful. Everything is just awful. But she basically gets, what is it? I think it's like married to this man for some, I don't remember what the reason was. Because she gets married to him, and he's like a brute. And it was just, I don't know. I wasn't convinced by them. I wasn't convinced at all by the characters. Was not a fan. And again, I can't tell you what happened because I hated it so much. Next one I guess I didn't hate that one, but I was really disappointed. So I think I still gave it like a 2 or a 2.5. I don't remember what I gave it. Anyway, the next one that I should have loved was Daisy Darker. Everything about this was like, I will love it. It's supposed to be like an And Then There Were None Agatha Christie thing. I've liked what this author has done with other books. I'm trying to remember who this author is. But I should have loved this. I should have loved this book, and I really just did not like it. And I think it's because of the plot twist. I didn't like the plot twist. It was just depressing, dark and depressing, the whole book. I wanted to like somebody, and I did not like a single character except for the one character that kind of has a shitty ending. It's not what I wanted. It's so unfortunate. The only redeeming characters like turn out not to be redeeming characters, and that's all I'm gonna say because there's tons of spoilers in this, so I have to be very careful talking about that one. But I didn't like it. That was a huge disappointment. And I know this is a very controversial book too. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people were like, what the hell did I just read? And I felt like, what the hell did I just read? So yeah, not a fan of that one. Next one, Runtime. I think I have a whole review about this one. This was one that I should have loved because I love everything that has to do with movie film thrillers. So like if it takes place on a set, if it's about old Hollywood starlets, if it's about literally anything having to do with movies, I tend to like it because I think they're really fun. This one was on a movie set, and it's supposed to be a horror thriller movie where the main character is alone in a cabin and real life starts mimicking the script. And this is multimedia. There are script pages in there. The problem is the script, like this has been done before. This has been done before, and the real life starts mimicking the script. The problem is you were getting the script pages and it matched so perfectly. It was like you were reading the book twice. So it would say all of this is happening, and then it literally exactly everything that happens, and then you do it over and over and over again. So it literally felt like you were reading the book twice, which I did not love. So that's something needed to be adjusted there. I don't know how, but something needed to be fixed in that position kind of thing. I don't know what was going on with that. The next one that I didn't love and should have loved it was The Family Game. Games, family intrigue, rich family who's possibly evil, possibly good, confusing things going on with the spouse, confusing things going on in her life. It should have been a home run. It should have been a grand slam of a book. And the book was stunning looking. I love that cover. And I hated this. It was a hate read. This should have been a DNF, but I really wanted to know what was going to happen. So I hate read the rest of the book. And it was so bad. It was so bad. I didn't like how it ended. And it ended in a way I'm getting really sick of in books. And I feel like that has affected the way I've read a couple books recently, because I'm getting fed up with seeing the same ending over and over and over again. I want something new. I want something new. I don't want all of these domestic thrillers to have the same killer / bad person. I'm getting sick of it. I need something else. I need something else. It literally affected a book I just read because it was the same general idea going on. But I still ended up liking that one. Just not as much as I feel like I could have liked it if I hadn't read so many thrillers with the same exact bad person. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. Next one is All Good People Here. I don't know what else to say other than this was just such a big letdown because of the ending. It went from a 3 to a 1. I talk about it in my wrap up, so go check that out because this one just exhausts me, to be honest. This exhausts me. It is a straight up ripoff of the John Benet Ramsey case, if you know anything about it. Probably don't even need to read the book, but the author kind of gives her own ideas. Like she makes it like a fictionalized version of it and connects other murders to what's going on. But there's like, is the same murder? How many murders are there? 1 murder, 2 murders, 1 million murders? What actually happened to the little girl? So she kind of gives her own twist about what happened in her mind. I'm guessing this is what she thinks actually happened. I don't know. But it very, very closely follows the John Benet Ramsey case, and it just kind of gets tedious and boring after a while. It was too on the nose. It should be a little too on the nose. Next one I'm talking about is one that I probably should have loved the most, but it was Killers of a Certain Age. I thought it was going to be a fun, funny, old women, previous assassins who are going to be hunted down and they have to survive and kick ass. Yeah, no. I didn't find it funny. I didn't think the women really kicked ass. It was kind of lame and unbelievable, and I hated the ending, and there's a lot of ands. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. The flashbacks were actually really good for the most part, but I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it, and I have to buy a book. Like, even if it's just absolutely absurd, there has to be some part of it that I buy. And I'm sorry, but I didn't buy that these women were beating up the new, brightest, best agents. I would have bought it if it went almost like more over the top. Like, have them just be like these crazy badasses and like kicking ass and taking names. I just feel like they didn't do that. I feel like they kicked butt just enough. Just enough that I was like, it's kind of boring how you're doing it. Like, I get it's more practical. I just didn't enjoy it. It just felt boring. And I don't know. This one was a lot harder to explain why I didn't like. I just generally didn't like it. Thought it was boring. Thought a lot of the action was off page. I feel like the action they did have was really good, but most of it was them sitting around trying to plan and saying that they're these really good assassins, saying that they've done all these things, but I had a really hard time believing it because they didn't do any of these amazing, crazy things that they talked about. Like, they didn't feel like these unbeatable assassins. So I think that's where most of my issues came from. The last one that we're going to be talking about, we're not really going to be talking about it. I'm just going to say its name, say very quickly why I didn't like it, and we're going to move on because there's a whole blog about this, or vlog about this, that you guys can go check out. But it was All of Our Demise, second book in that All of Us Villains series, and I hated it, and I never want to talk about it ever again because it makes me want to cry, because the first book was one of my favorite books this year, and the second book was one of my least favorite books this year. So go check out the vlog if you want to know more about that, but that's all I'm going to say about that one because I can't stand to talk about it. Anyway, moving on. That's all that I've got for you guys. There are plenty of other books that I didn't like this year, but they were more expected. Like, reading outside my comfort zone. Books that I was like, okay, yeah, I didn't really expect to like this, but I was hoping I would. So I'm not going to include those, or book series that I went to like kind of feeling okay already, and then the second or third book I just didn't like. I expect that. So this is my list of books that I should have loved, but I didn't, and it's really sad, but there really weren't too many for how many books I've read. I've read about like 150 books, I think, or 144 at this point, because I think my goal is 150, so I'm close to my goal. I should finish it pretty easily, I would hope. But that's on my list. Let me know what you guys thought of the books on this list. Make sure you subscribe because I will be coming out with part 2 on Thursday, which is books that I did love that I shouldn't have, which should be much more positive. I want to hear what you guys thought about these books because I feel like some of these are very hot button issues that a lot of people actually really love, and I was just out on a planet by myself. So I want to hear what you guys think. I feel like a lot of people have read like Daisy Darker, The Family Game, The Cartographers, The Book of Cold Cases, but I will also want to hear about the other ones that are on this list, okay? Want to hear about it. So I will see you guys in the next video on Thursday.